Welcome everyone to episode 22 of HR Leaders Live, the show where we discuss the future of work with today's most innovative and successful people leaders. My name's Chris Rainey, co-founder of HR Leaders and host of the HR Leaders podcast. As always, I'm joined by my fabulous co-hosts, Jill Katz and Matt Burns. Today's special guest is Elizabeth Wood, CHRO at Levi Strauss & Company. In this episode, we're going to be talking about employee engagement. Oh, sorry, employee experience. Apologies. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. Which, trust me, we've covered those more than enough by now. I think everyone's on the shows. Like we love these. To one of these topics, we can go on for hours. Elizabeth, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Wow. So I've had as you can tell, long career, all in HR actually, pretty much all in HR, pretty much straight out of college. I actually did one other job. And when I was doing that, my very first job out of college, I went to orientation or onboarding or induction, whatever you call it. And the woman stood up and started talking about her job, and she was in HR. And I literally had a moment of realization. I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to help people find their place in organizations. I want to help people find what works for them, what they love doing, how to make it better, how to make great leaders. And I've been in HR pretty much ever since then. I joined Sainsbury's, which you will know, on their graduate, they had a graduate, it was called personnel management at those days. I did that for a couple of years, worked for them. Then my husband and I moved to Canada. I worked for Marks and Spencer for a number of years in Canada. They at the time owned Brooks Brothers. So they asked me to move down to New York to run HR for Brooks Brothers, which I did for a number of years until they got sold. Then I did a little bit of consulting work for a while. And then I went to Warnaco, which also got sold. So there's a little bit of pattern there. After Warnaco, I did a short stint at Toys R Us, and then I went to Levi Strauss & Company, where I've been for about 4 years. So for the first year and a half that I was at Levi Strauss & Company, I commuted from New York to San Francisco every week because I had two kids at school. So that was quite the mega commute. And then once my kids finished high school, we left New York entirely, and both at college in Arizona. So we have a house in Arizona, and I spend most of my weekends there, and my husband comes up to San Francisco. We kind of split our time, but we are loving the warm weather and the no snow clearing. So.
Don't make us jealous. We get like a 1 week of sun. That's it. Done.
Well, we were back in Arizona at the weekend, and it was still about 97 degrees and the sun.
Oh my God.
Yeah, very nice.
What a great journey. It's so rare that someone is actually knows straight away that they want to do HR as a career. Mm-hmm. I've done over 90 episodes of our podcast, and maybe one or two people said that this is exactly what I wanted to do. Most people just kind of fell into it or somehow just found their way into HR in different routes. So it's great to hear that from you. So obviously today we're going to be talking.
At the time I went into it, though, there were not a lot of options for people to go to school. Now I think you're going to have more people going straight into it because they are teaching HR, organizational psychology, organizational development at colleges and universities, and people are much more likely to identify HR as the position of HR has changed so much in that time from, kind of personnel management to really being a key part of what organizations need.
I am quite shocked at what people are teaching though. My wife's sister's doing her CIPD masters in HR at the moment. What a coincidence. And some of the course material that she brings home to my house, I'm like, it's almost 10 years out of date, and it's what's being taught right now. And I'm looking at some of the videos she shows me of their lectures, and I'm like, this is so far away from the reality of what's happening in the organizations right now, and this is the future generation of HR leaders coming through. So that does shock me. I think that needs to be addressed as well. So I don't know if you guys have experienced that in terms of people that you've interviewed and that have come in done their CIPD, or I don't know what's the equivalent in the US?
SHRM.
SHRM, I think probably is.
Right?
Yeah. SHRM. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. When I graduated college a year and a half ago, why are you laughing?
Jill, love it.
I'm a mature student.
I'm gonna edit a caption above Jill's head saying "lying."
There wasn't even such a thing. There wasn't a major. I actually recall at the time when I graduated college, I went into a sales position, an account executive position, and I got involved in a recruiting effort when I first graduated college. I loved it so much. And I went to the VP of HR at the time, and I remember going in and saying, I don't know what's happening here, but I think I want to be involved. Yeah. And she said to me, no, that's not for you. We need you on the business side. And that was actually what drove me to go into HR, but I didn't know anything really about it except that something drew me to it. But I had never really even heard about it college at the time. And when you fast forward to today, and people like a Marianne Spatola, who has been on our show, she's now a person, she's an adjunct, and she teaches at NYU. And it's very exciting to me to think about people like a Marianne, like an Elizabeth, like some of the folks that we do talk to on the show who are in universities today, actually adding to what the coursework should be and giving real life scenarios of what's happening in organizations today.
I completely agree, because Natasha's sisters, everyone that teaches them, they've never worked a day in the profession. And I always find it quite hard to well, what are you paying for, and kind of where's the experience coming from? It's just something that they've read in a textbook themselves and they're passing on. I don't know, something never sits well with me whenever I hear that. So it's great to hear that a lot of the members
spend a day with me in the office. That's enough education.
You probably get more. Most leaders I speak to as well, they say they hire for experience over qualifications any day. That seems to be in HR what I hear most from a lot of the leaders when they're looking to hire people into their team.
I think the other thing that's been an interesting trend, though, is sometimes at senior levels in HR now, what you're finding is instead of going out and replacing the CHRO with someone who's come up the traditional HR route, they're digging into the business and saying, you want to be a rounded business leader, you need to understand how to run the people operations. I've had a couple of experiences of meeting people who've done that, and you know what? They never want to get out. They want to stay, right? There's a couple of examples of people who they said this would be a great reputation for me because I could learn the people side of the business. I love it. I don't want to go back to the people side, because now I've realized what a positive lever the people side of the business is. I think I can actually influence more from here than I would necessarily going back into sales or marketing or wherever they came from. It's kind of an interesting trend.
No, I've heard that a lot, because you're really in HR. You're connected to everywhere. You're connected to all the different segments of the business. So you can have influence there, whereas the other guys can't. I've heard that actually a lot. You're completely right about that as well.
It's a double-edged sword, though, Chris, because if you don't have those levers, it's so frustrating, because you can influence all those pieces and you can make change positively across the organization. And you are, generally speaking, our view on business strategy is a longer term horizon than other people on the executive team or in senior management or the board. So it's always an interesting dynamic of trying to balance short-term interest, long-term interest, culture, financials. It's that, that yin and yang.
One of the things when people come out of the business and they spend some time in HR, universally they say to me, it's really hard, right? And from an outside observer's point of view, it's like, oh, HR knows what they're doing, or HR is slow, or decisions take too long, or, I don't understand why they have a policy around it, or whatever it is. And then when they get in and they actually have to be part of that decision-making process, whether it's the stakeholder management takes longer than you think, or the policy is there for a reason that you didn't even know about or think about. I'm not a big policy person, but, when you get closer to it, you realize sometimes the complexities and the dynamics of it you don't see from the outside.
I'll just add to that is, I often use the example, people don't call me or send me an email when things are good. I'm not getting the congratulatory emails on a regular basis. I'm getting the ones where, hey, Matt, we've tried to fix this 3 times. We botched it so bad. Can you please come in and help?
Yeah.
And the answer is always yes. But then I'm inserting myself in a situation where I don't know that I'm entirely wanted by both parties. And when the resolution is arrived at least one, if not both parties, isn't happy with me. And I didn't create the issue and I didn't ask to be involved, but that's my job. So it's an interesting role in that I think a lot of people that I talk to who are kind of thinking about HR as a profession say, I like working with people and, I want to help people. And that's great. That isn't entirely the job. You have to really like people to understand that there's going to be good days and some days that are challenging, because when you're dealing with people, there's so much variables. And our job ultimately is to help the broader organization move forward, and that may come at the expense of an individual colleague.
So I think that this is so interesting, and it's almost topic worthy of a show. This
I literally was thinking the same thing, Jill, in my head. I was like, maybe this show should be like what to expect from working in HR or something.
I mean, I think to myself, what is the ultimate future CHRO? And there's so many conversation points around it, and what are the pros and the cons? And there's even to me a conversation about what does that then do to the career path and perspective for the upcoming HR organization. But one thing I don't want to miss is that had experience to work with Elizabeth for a significant portion of my career, which makes me very lucky, is that something that Elizabeth has been really quite religious about in the past 10 to 15 years of her career that I've known her, is culture and the experience of employees. And I worked for Elizabeth at Warnaco, which was a portfolio of brands, Calvin Klein, Speedo, a portfolio of intimate apparel brands, Chaps, Ralph Lauren, and now at Levi's. And I know that employee experience is something that you've been incredibly passionate about. And so one of the things I just kind of wanted to start with is, what is employee experience?
So I think the interesting thing about employee experience is it's one of those evolutionary things that I think is changing the lens of HR a little bit. In the same way, and I liken it, and being in the retail business, I liken it a little bit to, we used to talk about customer service, right? At that point at which the customer to purchase or interact with somebody, did they get good service, right? That's changed really a lot in the way we think about, the commercial side of the business. And now we think about the customer experience, right? So it's everything from how does it feel when you walk into the store, and the branding and the messaging in the store, and how easy it is to navigate or not navigate the store, and can I find easily what I want, and and of course the interaction with a sales associate or stylist in our case is really important, and it's important that they're knowledgeable and friendly and able to help you find what you want and suggest stuff. It doesn't mean that the service part of it isn't important, but it's a much more holistic way of thinking about it, because apart from anything else, what we know is that our customers are experiencing the brand Levi's or our other brands, Dockers, Signature, Denizen, in many different ways, right? It's not just I go into a store. I could be in Macy's and look at Levi's. I could go online and look at Levi's. I could go online to levistrauss.com or to macys.com, or I could go to an outlet store. I could be in a full price store. There are so many different ways that people experience our brand. What we want to do is have that experience be as consistent and holistic as possible. So you can't just focus on, did you get good service at the register? That's the sort of old-fashioned way of looking at it. Much more concerned about the whole holistic journey of the customer. So if I bought something online and I want to return it in the store, do we make that easy for you to do? Like if I bought something and it's the wrong size, can you help me return it? Can you suggest something else instead? So I think that as we've transformed into thinking about customer experience, we need to think about employee experience. And it takes HR from, here's what's a little bit away from what's being done for you or to you, to flipping the question to the employee and saying, how would you like to experience this? And, in particular, what are the ways in which you want to access the services of HR and the things that HR can do for you? Because a lot of people now are working in much more distributed workforces. If I look at our employee population at LS & Co., less than 20% of people sit at a desk every day with an email address. But our old model of HR is, let's put out an email to tell everybody what the new schedule is or the new policy on this is. It doesn't work anymore, right? And I think increasingly as we have remote working from home, the gig economy, any of those things, we're going to have to just think differently about how we interact with our employees. So that's kind of, one of the things we've been looking at LS & Co. is, and it's much more also about asking than telling. And I think that that's an important flip for HR.
So what does that actually mean then for the HR function? If it is more of a flip, if HR is used to a model where there is sort of this buffet of services that we're used to providing to the organization, and now we're moving into how can we, or what is it that you'd like? What does it mean for an HR organization?
So I can tell you what it means for us at LS&Co in particular, which is, and this came out of some of the work we've done on HR strategy over the last couple of years, which is, first and foremost, it means for us much more workforce segmentation. I think HR has a little bit of a tendency, or we've had a tendency, I shouldn't presume perhaps, to do a little bit of a one-size-fits-all. Here's a training program that works for managers, let's send it out to managers and do it to managers, right? What we have to figure out is that actually the experience of being a manager in our distribution center, being a manager in one of our plants, we still have some of our own manufacturing, or being a retail store manager is very different than the experience and even just the sort of basic logistics of being a manager in the office or a sales account executive or any of those things. And what we've tended, I think, in the past to do is kind of package everything the same and say, here's the company's, manager essentials course. Well, it just doesn't fit everybody the same. So we've spent a lot of time thinking much more carefully about how do we, fit for purpose the programs and things that we are designing. And, it may well be, and this is just an example, it may well be that manager essentials program for the distribution center needs to be delivered in 20-minute lunchtime chunks, right? That's all. Maybe that it's an e-learning program that gets sent to some of our sales offices where we can't physically go and present it. It may just, the way, the format, the messaging, it may be that it needs to be designed differently, may need to be more interactive in some places, less in others. It could be leader-led in some places, peer-led in others. But you have to think through that target audience much more carefully in order to make sure that what you're doing is designing it really for the population it's intended, rather than just kind of doing things. And also, in some cases, what we've sort of said is, scarcity of resources. We're all trying to do more with less. A friend in HR who says, I keep being told to do more with less, soon I'll be doing everything with nothing, right? The logical conclusion of it. But, as that happens, the reality is we have to say, it's really important that this program gets delivered in our distribution centers. We cannot do it in our retail stores. It doesn't have the same urgency. It doesn't. So prioritizing the workforce segments much more carefully for us has been sort of the beginning piece of it. I tie it in with our journey at LS&Co on engagement, and I know you've talked a lot about engagement on this show over time, and we've been on a journey of the last 4 years since I got there. We worked with Gallup, and we've proudly gone from not very good to top quartile in the last 4 years, with a real focus. And that's very focused on what are leaders doing, how's your leader showing up, and a little bit more on, how are we doing? It's really a measurement to from our point of view about how are we doing in terms of, providing a workplace you want to come to. I think when you flip it to employee experience, it's much more asking the question, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're looking for? How do we create an environment that really helps you maximize your strengths, make your best contribution, bring your whole self to work, all of those things that people really are looking for. But it's a little bit different for everybody, first of all, so that sort of one-size-fits-all vanilla thing is out the door. But I think it also allows employees to be much more part of the process of designing the workplace. And I think that that's a really important switch for us to make. And it's a little bit like that customer journey I talked about at the beginning. Right? Stop thinking about service, and HR is a service organization, right? So we're focused on how are we serving our employees? Well, how are our employees experiencing the organization?
Myself and Matt done a short video recently around the exact topic, and we were all saying, Matt was saying that we're already doing it for our customers and taking that bespoke approach. So why are we not doing it for our employees?
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. We already know how to do it. Doing it already. We already have the resources internally to do it for our customers. So why are we not doing that for our employees? It does seem pretty crazy. And you are right. You need to, there's no longer, the newsletter is no longer going to work, as me and Matt said. The internal, intranet, no one's logging in there to check, the latest update. It doesn't work, right? Whereas if you had use modern methods of video or podcast or etc. and be where people are, and this is where they spend their time in their WhatsApps, in their, their Slacks. You need to deliver it in a way that they're going to consume it. And it doesn't take a lot. I think it actually takes a lot more time to do it in the current way than actually to do it in the new way, which is what seems, even more. Yeah.
And it's more expensive.
And it's more expensive in the current way we're doing it.
We're doing everything for everybody, right? As opposed to trying to be much more targeted around what it is we're trying to provide in the right place and kind of meeting people where they are.
We've had this conversation before in a couple of different contexts. And I think what I would just add is the competencies of HR and marketing are really merging, because it's the same methodology and it's the same segmentation using data, trying to create a customized experience. And while in the marketing context, you're trying to activate that individual to drive revenue, in this context, you're trying to activate that individual to drive engagement. So the methodology isn't all that dissimilar. It's just a matter of, you ask where HR is going in the future. I think it's a hybrid of where we are today, marketing and technology. And the CHRO of the future needs to understand those three areas and how they interplay. You don't need to be able to write code. You don't need to be able to write copy, but understand how those three things interplay in the context of an employment culture. I think that's ultimately where this profession is going.
One of the things we did at LS&Co. when we did a sort of 6-month strategy project, because I think we would, HR can do lots of good things, but unless we figure out how to sort of pull the red thread through everything and help people understand, they think it's without strategy, right? And it's just sort of good stuff that you have to help people make the connections, I think. So we've been doing some work on that. So, the sort of 4 cornerstones of our strategy, no great secret, and no great rocket science, were sort of talent for the future. What are the skills that are going to come from, emerging technologies and just the way business is changing and trending, and how are we helping our organization with better future workforce planning and strategic workforce planning? Data-driven decisions, right? So like most people, we're on the journey of, how do we figure out this people analytics piece of it? Workforce segmentation, which I just talked about a little bit, and then kind of employee experience and how is that happening? And one of the things we did in our strategy work was the first thing we did was go and get data from the business, right? And did lots of focus groups and interviews and surveys and things like that. And, one of the things that came across very clearly is, people have different needs in how they want to experience HR and different needs at different times. So, people are very happy when they have a simple question to call our call center. We have a great call center in Texas that we set up recently. People are very happy to call with a basic benefits question. That's fine to experience HR that way. For other things, though, they want a different level of interaction. For some things, they wish they had a simple technology to do it. For some things, they want that interpersonal touch. They want face-to-face. But we've got to figure out which are the right ways to interact with our employees at which different times. So one of the things we did in terms of this kind of employee experience work, and I'd be really honest, we're really at the early part of this journey, but is we kind of mapped out the employee life cycle, everything from, when a candidate first starts thinking about applying for a job at LS&Co, to the candidate experience, to that day when you get an offer, to your first day at work. And what we did through that employee life cycle is we identified sort of 17, and there could be 25, and there could be 40, or there could be 10 that you worry about, moments that matter. That's what we call it, moments that matter. That day when you get that offer, right, from LS&Co, should just be a day you'll always remember. Right? There should be a way of us creating an experience in that moment that makes you feel incredibly excited about coming to work at LS&Co. Same thing with your first day at work, right? You should come in and there's just so much opportunity to just do small things that make a big difference to that first day at work. Or the typical moment that matter that we're thinking about right now as we go through our sort of cycle of the year is the moment when your boss sits down with you to tell you what your pay is going to be for next year. That's a moment that can have incredible importance for an employee. And we have to help leaders make the most of that moment, right? And say, here's something I could do. I need good preparation, as opposed to, by the way, while you're here, I've got, it's 3.5. No, it's 4%. Did I have your base right to start? It's like, how do we help that be a moment where you really connect with your leader, with the organization? So we've got these 17 moments that matter, and we're doing a little bit of design thinking, a little bit of, asking people, and some of the workshops we've been doing, it's not just HR people. We want people from the business in there telling us, how would this look? What would this look like to you if it was a great moment?
What's really interesting is, while those might sound small, they are so real. And one of the things I love about the conversations we have on this show is, we often joke that Matt and I play the yin and the yang, right? The head and the heart, or the technology.
You made it that way, Jill. He had no choice. You made him the bad guy, unfortunately. Matt didn't choose that, Jill.
No judgment. I just think that, I'm the good and he's the bad.
Oh, okay. No judgment.
Yeah.
Because the U.S. has never picked on Canada before.
What'd you say? Again, in this moment in the U.S., I'm not going to pick on anyone.
You're not allowed. You can't.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to be picking on anybody. I'm gonna stay quiet. But really, truly, what's interesting is, as I talk to clients, and particularly really senior folks, in the past 2 months, conversations I've had that have to me include a C-level person telling me about starting at an organization, and on the very first day, starting in an office where there was no computer.
I was about to say that. That happened to me in my last job. No email set up for me, no computer on my desk, just nothing. No one to actually onboard me and to tell me what's going to be happening for the next week or two.
And I
it's the worst thing to happen. And
this person told me that he opened the drawer of his desk in his office, his C-level executive, and there was stuff in the drawer from the person before.
Like a sandwich or something?
That's what I was thinking.
Unfortunately, it wasn't a sandwich, but he said to me, I don't want to make a big deal about it. Nobody wants to be the new person who
complaining, yeah.
But that is a moment, and that is an experience, and people remember that. And then I had a conversation just yesterday with another client who has a new hire starting next week. And I said to that person, your new person is starting. Have you called them just to talk about the first day so that your person knows what time to come?
Really? That basic? Oh, God.
What time to come and what's going to happen on that day? And the person said to me, no.
Wow.
And so these are things that just seem so small. And in the course of business, we're so busy.
Yes. Yeah.
And the last one I would call it is, I know an HR person who years ago,
was it me?
No,
Oh.
Thank God. I was going to say, I did have some comp moments with Elizabeth, but they all went really well. Thank you for those. But I actually remember an HR person years ago whose comp conversation was pushed off 4 times in 2 days. And we all know when that comp conversation is coming, you stare at it on your calendar for a week, and you tell your significant other at home that your meeting today is at 2:00 and you're going to call them after, and we are deciding whether or not to buy that car based on it. And so these moments really do matter, and this is where the heart piece is so important. And it really does deserve that focus. So I love that you're doing that. I would ask, just to provoke, which I love to do, and ask all of us, what are the dangers of leaning into organizations now this way, and how will we stir things up by focusing on employee experience?
So let me jump right in, because we have this head and heart thing that you so beautifully crafted for our on-air dynamic. You talk about the culture, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think the challenge is that when you don't leverage technology in today's business, and with the rate it's changing and the amount of things that we all have on our plate, you run the risk of hurting your culture, which is ironic that if you don't put technology in place, it's going to hurt your employee experience. So for me, it's not a question of whether it's heart or head. It has to be a combination of both. And what we did in our organization was start with a foundation of technology so that we knew the very basic transactional parts of the employee experience would be handled. So we didn't have to worry about, did you get an email a week before your start date with where you're supposed to be? You didn't have to worry about, what's your phone number for your new coach and what that looks like on your first day. We didn't worry about the policies that relate to dress code so you knew what to wear when you came to the office on the first day. We thought through what we would go through as an employee, and we tried to front load that information. And you know who does this really, really well? I'll give them a bit of a shout out, is Salesforce. They've taken their CRM technology, completely inverted it, and then take in data, and they can tell you, well, Matt, we know that when an employee starts with us on day, and I forget the exact day, but it's like day 18, they're going to ask us about their benefits. So we send them a benefits email on day 16.
Yeah.
Not on day 1 when they're overwhelmed, but we know that they're kind of sifting through all this new experience. Because when you start with a company, well, I would say one failure of our approach was we just piled it in front. So on day 1, you just got stacks of emails and information, which is better than nothing.
You get dragged around the office, introducing to everyone. It's too much.
You need no one can consume that information.
Hey, Matt, I think we're at a point, I think, that it isn't a choice. I mean, my view would be that if there were a company now that had to make a choice, they would have to choose technology at this point. If you had so few resources, you have to choose technology because it will take you further faster.
And as we always say, we can focus more time on what things that matter.
Right.
Even me, there's only 4 of us in this office. We're a startup, but even we have a chatbot which answers questions and it can give feedback on basic tasks that I don't need to tell everyone. It's just there. And it costs me, $10 a month to build a chatbot for our company where you can download the latest PDF, the latest information, pretty much any administrative task. This chatbot that costs me $10 a month can give you the answer to, just so I can focus on other things that really matter to the organization. So if we can do it as a 4-person startup, and I'm sure other organizations can do it.
I think it does challenge the traditional paradigm of HR though a little bit, right? And there is a change management challenge both for the customers of HR and also for the HR team itself, which is if we can get really efficient about delivering all of those basic services and so on, it frees up a lot of HR time, which is great. We've got to know how and where to reinvest that time and build the skill and capability in our teams to use that time effectively in things that really drive the business. And that's a different challenge for some people, who've traditionally been involved in these very sort of task intensive interactions, and we should be helping people make that leap, I think. And sometimes there's change management with our employees too, which is somebody said to me in the survey work that we were doing prior to the strategy work we did at LS, and we had somebody who said, I used to like it when I could walk down the corridor and go to someone in HR and say, how many vacation days do I have accrued for next year? And I said to them, well, welcome to the 1950s, because it's actually just not going to ever come back. So, we can argue that we don't have enough resources in HR, all of those things, but that's not the way that HR is going to continue to add value to the business. Those are the things we should be streamlining, but we shouldn't lose the heart and soul of them either. They're still important, right? And that's, I think, the piece we have to get over is delivering that service is still important, and people still need it, but we have to help them, cross the barrier into technology or whatever else it is to help them get there. Because it's very hard to argue that you can add all this other value if those basic services, that service delivery, which kind of runs along the bottom, isn't getting executed with good standards. So you have to kind of be able to juggle both a little bit.
I think it's spot on. I think we just have to broaden the definition of what service is. Traditionally, service does not include speed in HR. I mean, if you want to go somewhere fast in a company, you don't go to HR. So we just have to redefine what service means for our customer. And you're right. The days of coming to my desk and asking me what the vacation accrual is not happening. But I could throw a chatbot in, and you could ask that question at 2:00 in the morning, wherever you are in the world, and that's service.
That's right.
So it's just redefining what service means.
Right. So now you can actually move from the word service to partnership. Right. So if you want service, you can leverage technology. And we are here, your HR partner, your business partner is here actually for a different role, actually, to partner with you on things that are more strategic that will in fact accelerate your business. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really interesting piece here. I know that we're tough on time, so I'm supposed to do a little bit of hot seating.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, I'm supposed
Jules has made up a whole new segment of the show on her own.
Yeah, the first thing I do is I try to embarrass Matt, which I'm amazingly good at. Matt.
Hi, Joe. You can ask me one of your characteristic 4-minute questions again?
With four different questions in one question.
Yeah, exactly. I got my notepad. Here we go.
Oh, Matt, this one's going to be so good. I'm so
excited.
And I'm going to start off with I love you.
Oh, thank you. I love you too.
2 days ago, you and I were texting. And what you texted me is that you were cleaning your toilet.
It was. Yeah.
What? Where's this going?
And then you wrote #perspective. Can you tell us what that was about?
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised you asked this question, Jill, but I guess I am. So I guess kind of long story short, on Monday, I made a pretty big commitment publicly. I indicated to the world, which means my social media audience, my friends and my family, that I'm on a mission to raise $1 million for charity in 5 years. And I'll be doing that by addressing some of the problems we talked about in the show, which is I view the challenge in HR as a supply and demand problem. The demand is what organizations want from HR. I think we have to redefine that so that we can provide better service for the organization. I think it starts with a foundation of technology and service delivery, and I'll be helping organizations do that. The second area is actually on the supply side, which is helping the HR profession redefine itself to provide that service against that service delivery model, which requires everything from thought leadership to also working with vendors and clients that help support HR. So helping teach those technology firms that support us what we need and how we can better deliver service going forward. And to achieve that, I put that message out in the world, and we'll be generating a business that's going to allow us to provide service and be compensated for that, but by the same token, give most of it away. Because I think we're at a place now where we have to look at problems differently. Yeah. I don't think the traditional business model works. So I'm taking a gamble on generosity in society and hoping that a message that leads with the heart and with generosity actually is the perfect business model, as opposed to one that leads with profit and sales. So that's what I was doing. And then I was teasing Jill afterwards to say, I put that message out, kind of committed my next 5 years of my life in the ultimate measure of accountability. And then an hour later, I realized that I hadn't cleaned my washroom in a few weeks. I needed to get that done. So I was doing that next.
It's perspective right there. Now it makes sense. Now it makes complete sense.
I had to put that out there because it was so honest and so us. And I love what you're doing. I love what you've thought of. I think it is really different and brave. And I love also that at the same time, you're so darn human that you're cleaning your own toilet. Cause well, I don't clean my toilets.
Jill, you're one in a million, Jill.
Yes, they know. And then, of course, my last question is for Elizabeth, one of my mentors, which is not really a hot seat question. Let's say a warm seat question.
No, let her ask you a hot seat question, Jill. Let Elizabeth ask you a hot seat question.
Let's think about those moments that matter, and tell me a time in your career when you had a moment that mattered that somebody handled really well, and a moment that mattered that somebody didn't handle well.
I have many.
Of course.
The first one that comes to mind is one that the moment that was handled the most well in my whole career is the one that has changed my entire career trajectory.
Wow.
And it is the one that I will be talking about next week when I speak at the Humans First Club event. And it'll be the first time I ever talk about it out loud. And you know about it.
Oh, I do?
Which I had a very, very serious health scare.
I do remember that. Yes.
When my son was 16 weeks old. And I had just been out on maternity leave. And in the US, maternity leave is not what it's like in other countries. It's actually pretty tight. But as Elizabeth knows, I may have stayed out
a little longer,
maybe a little longer. And I did come back. And I'm very proud to say that when I came back, I was promoted. And that was very exciting. And I was promoted on, I'll never forget this, November 1st. And November 23rd that year was the Thanksgiving holiday. And I had an event on November 29th. And that's why I know all the dates. And it was very serious, and I definitely was not able to come back to work for a while. And I will never forget being in the hospital and trying to figure out what was going on, because it was absolutely impossible for me. And my husband explaining to me that I wasn't going back to work, and me explaining to him that I had some presentation
right?
to Helen.
Yeah. Critical.
And I remember him taking my phone and sending an email to you and to the group president. And I remember the people, actually, to a person named Helen, a person named Martha, to Elizabeth, and a person named Mike, explaining what was going on. And I had just been out for longer than I should have, and I had just been promoted, and I felt this tremendous sense of responsibility. And every one of the leaders, in a period of, less than 1 minute, responded back with nothing other than human care, that it was all about my health and my well-being. And I did not come back to work for a while. And all I got from those people in that company in that time was care for myself and my health and this new baby that I had at the time. And when I came back, my career had not been stalled, and the work, people had picked up the work. And that event is something I've never talked about before, that I'm going to talk about on the 18th, because I don't know why I never talked about it, but it changed me as a person, and changed me as a manager. And the way that those people, you being one of them, handled it is something I'll never forget as long as I live. And something that I always hope to give back.
Well, I think we have to say #perspective, right? Because I always, and I say this to my team now, we're making great product. It's fantastic. We love it. We think it's what the consumer wants. We want to sell more and more of it. But at the end of the day, we're selling jeans. And, there are so many other things going on in the world we need to care about as well.
So that's the answer to that.
All right, good answer.
And
I'm glad you asked the question now. Thanks for sharing, Jill.
yeah, wow. That story, so many, I'll blog about them.
I'm going to have to do a #perspective separate video just from those two moments. That's the title of the video for LinkedIn now. I think that's perfect. Well, guys, I think we can carry on going for another hour if we really want to. I don't so much time, but I think that's all for today, guys. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience. We really appreciate it.
Good, it was a lot of fun.
Fantastic, and it's always great to see you two guys as always on there. I feel like we see each other every other day now. We're like best friends. Yeah, perfect. So thank you all for tuning in, everyone, for listening. If you've got any questions for us, drop us a question in the comments below on YouTube, LinkedIn. The video will be up tomorrow, so you guys can all listen. Apart from that, thanks for listening, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.